Hi everyone, welcome back to Almost Normal. I'm in bed today because, first of all, I'm lazy. I cannot be bothered to do anything. I just attempted to cook lunch. I was going to make like a sweet potato in the oven and some salad or whatever. And I was like, it took everything in me to get up and start to do that. And then I turned on the oven to heat it up. I checked after like 5 minutes of it heating up to see if anything was happening, and it was ice cold in the oven still. And it smelled really very, very strongly of gas. So I very quickly turned that off because I think gas was literally spreading through my house. So anyway, my only attempt at doing anything productive today went horribly wrong. And I almost blew up my house. So probably just gonna stay in bed for the day. Also, it's absolutely boiling. It's a heat wave in LA again, the second of the month, I think. And my podcast room is so hot. The AC does not blow into that room and the sun just beams directly into that room. It does with this room as well, but at least there's AC in this room. Anyway, I was like sweating bullets in the other room, so it just wasn't working, so I had to move. So anyway, we're in bed. I don't really think anyone cares actually about why I'm in bed. But anyway, welcome back to the podcast. A little bit of a more casual vibe today, but I hope that's okay with everyone. What I wanted to talk about today, I have actually kind of already spoken about this in a previous episode. I think it was like literally episode 3 of the podcast. I sort of spoke a little bit about my OCD tendencies and being diagnosed with OCD and everything. Yesterday, I was making a smoothie. And I was like filming the process because I wanted to make like a cute TikTok of me making a smoothie or whatever. And I was filming myself pouring the smoothie into the glass, and I ended up for some reason getting really triggered, and I got into a OCD cycle, like a OCD repeating action cycle. And so in the video, I caught myself like tapping the smoothie container onto my glass like multiple times, and for some reason I was like, oh, I'm just gonna post it because I don't really know why. Like, I know a lot of people with OCD, but I actually haven't really met anyone that has the exact same like triggers or the exact same sort of actions that come with it. I've met a lot of people that have to count to certain numbers and have to do things a certain number of times, and they usually have like a specific number in mind, like 3 or 5 or something like that. But I'm yet to meet anyone that has what I have, which is I have to repeat actions until I'm thinking in my head about something that is happy to me. And if I do an action and in my head I'm thinking about someone I don't like or something I don't like or something that scares me, I have to repeat the action until I can literally control my brain to think of something good, and then I can finally stop doing the action. And as you probably figured, like, mind control is not exactly the easiest thing to do to control your thoughts. So I can be there for a good while doing the same action over and over and over again until it feels good. And sometimes I literally have to just be like, stop! Like, I say that in public, I'm just like, stop! Or like, no, no, because I genuinely have to like physically stop my body from doing it. Otherwise I'll be there forever. You know, I'll literally just spend hours doing it. But anyway, I posted the video of me doing that last night because I was like, yesterday. I guess I was just curious to see if anyone else had the same as me, just because I had not met them before, and I wasn't really expecting a response at all. I just sort of posted it to see if like anyone would be like, oh, like I do that. That's crazy. I've never met anyone else that does that before. And I would have been like, oh, thank God. Like, yes. So sorry going through this, but like I'm so happy that I'm not the only one on this planet. I mean, mental illness loves to make you feel like you're the only one. Mental illness is the biggest isolator in the world. It makes you think that no one has ever experienced anything you've been through or anything like it, and no one will ever understand you, and you're not normal, and you're going through something that no one's ever going to get, and you're just like alone, and you have no one to talk to about it, and you feel embarrassed to talk about it, so then you don't want to, and it's just the worst isolator ever. Me as an alcoholic as well, like I really struggle with isolation. But that's what mental illness thrives on, is like keeping you by yourself, not letting you have anyone to talk to, not letting you try and get better or recover or anything. So anyway, I posted it because I was like, if I could find one person that feels this way, that would be wonderful. So anyway, I posted it and I got like way more responses than I had imagined I would have gotten. I think I got like 200,000 views at the moment, and all the comments are literally people just like me being like, I did not know that anyone else felt this way, and this is insane. And there's a bunch of comments of people saying this and saying how this is so relatable and I do the exact same thing and this is crazy, I thought I was all by myself, and oh my god, like I always do this in public, it's so embarrassing. And like I was absolutely mind blown by the amount of response I got from that video, because I genuinely thought that I was the only one that felt that way, and I felt like I was going absolutely mental because I have a friendship group with like a lot of mental illness. Like pretty much all of my friends are alcoholics in recovery, and what comes with that is typically a lot of mental illness. And so I was starting to feel like the absolute maddest person ever, because I was like, wow, like I seem more insane than everyone else, I was just like, what is happening? So anyway, getting those responses was so lovely and genuinely like actually made me I feel like today I was much less OCD than I was yesterday, and I'm like wondering whether it's because I was able to like relate to other people and I was able to hear that other people were experiencing the same thing, because yesterday I was really feeling very triggery, and like today I really have been absolutely fine, which is really interesting. And so I wonder if it was just like the mixture of talking about it and just like hearing other people talk about it was like really helpful to me. I don't know. But anyway, a lot of the comments also were saying like, thank you, like I didn't know anyone else felt like this. This is such a relief to know that other people have these experiences. And so I just wanted to make this podcast about this, because when I'm feeling shitty and I'm feeling alone and I feel like no one else understands what I'm going through, I a lot of the time do go to social media. And whenever I find someone who is talking about something I'm concerned about and I thought I was the only one, and I'm hearing someone else tell their story about it, it's the most relieving, wonderful feeling in the world just to know that someone else out there is feeling the same way as you. And if you ever needed to, you could probably reach out to them and say like, I'm feeling this way, and they will like 100% understand what you're talking about, and you won't have to try and explain yourself to them. And it's just like the most relieving feeling in the world. And so I was like really, really touched and happy that some people were saying that like, oh, thank you for making this post, because I genuinely thought I was the only one. And so I wanted to talk a bit more about it on YouTube, just in case anyone on here is experiencing anything like that, because I know it's like really hard. And I did get into it, like, I think episode 3, but I don't know if I don't really know if I'd like discussed it in like full detail. I think I was a little bit shallow about it. So yeah, hold on. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, I guess the first thing people ask me is like, did I experience OCD my whole life, or is this like a new development? And I did not know I had OCD till very recently. I think like literally a couple years ago. I did not know what the name for what I was experiencing was, and have since been treated for it. But obviously it's nothing that can be cured. Like it's always going to be there. It's just sort of like kept at bay a little bit more than it used to be. But when I was a kid, I have memories of me being very germophobic and very concerned about other people's germs contaminating my body. And I spent a lot of time in the shower. I spent a lot of time cleaning myself and being very concerned about sitting down with other children, and would always like ask my mom if it's possible that I could like pick up the bacteria into my body, and then it's like, so I was like very much obsessed with like contagion OCD, but I didn't know it was OCD back then. But I do remember having like 3 or 4 showers a day sometimes, and just being very upset and couldn't really think about anything else if I felt like someone had like put their germs on me or whatever. And obviously when you're a kid, you're around children all the time, in very close quarters to them. You're sitting in circle time on the floor, like you're all like squished up together in a little classroom, like you're pretty close to other people. And I don't think I really liked that. I don't think my germophobia went on for that long. I think it was kind of a passing phase back then, but I do remember that. I do remember having that, which is like the only kind of thing that I can remember from being a child that could have been OCD. I'm not sure. That would be me self-diagnosing at that point, because I was never seen by a doctor, so I have no idea. But anyway, then as I grew up, I started drinking a lot of alcohol and doing a lot of substances. So I pinned down all of my weird anxieties to the fact that I literally was drinking alcohol every day, and I didn't really think much further than that. I wasn't like, oh, maybe I should go see a doctor and like see if they can tell me anything that's, diagnose me with something. Like, I was not really mentally with it enough to think that my anxieties were coming from anything but alcohol and drugs, because it just seemed so obvious to me. I was like, of course I'm going to be anxious, I'm not drinking all the time. But as a sober person, I now know that I was probably drinking because of my mental illness. I was trying to relieve myself of the constant noise and madness in my head. I guess it worked in one way, but absolutely did not work in every other way possible. Like, self-medication is very dangerous, very scary, and I didn't actually even know I was doing it because I didn't even really know I was mentally unwell. Obviously, in the beginning of my alcoholism, like, I just thought I was being a fun teenager, and then just it got worse and worse and worse. But when I got sober, I spent a lot of time being pretty anxious and felt like I was doing a little bit of OCD tendency. Actually, I will say that when I was drinking, I would spend a lot of time the next day doing some serious damage control on the night, and my panic would be from having gaps in the night that I couldn't account for, and it would stress me out if I didn't know exactly what I did, exactly what I said, exactly who I spoke to. Like, I had to know everything about the night before, otherwise I like had a mental breakdown, and my mind would fill the gaps with like horrible things that didn't happen, but my brain would like convince me that they did. So I guess that was my OCD coming out then. Like, I had to be 100% sure of every step of the night, which is very, very hard to do when you're intoxicated. So I obviously wasn't really thinking about it when I was drunk, but the minute I woke up the next day, I was like, holy shit, like, I need to call everyone. I need to get everyone down here. They need to tell me exactly what happened, and I need to have photographic proof of everything they're saying, because I don't really trust anyone to tell me the reality of anything. Anyway, so I guess that definitely was the OCD coming out, like, once the alcohol sort of dissipated slightly in my body. And I did do a lot of like taking pictures throughout the night, like random pictures of my feet or random pictures of a bar or anything like that, just so the next day could have something to go off of, some sort of trail that I could follow. So that is definitely OCD, because I still do that now as a sober person. So yeah, if I was doing it back then, that's definitely what that was. But I didn't really notice it in that way. I knew I was doing it, but I thought like, oh, I'm just an alcoholic. Like, I'm going to do weird stuff like that. Like, whatever. Maybe if I stop drinking, I won't feel this way. And obviously, an alcoholic, they find it really quite hard to stop drinking and doing substances like that. So it didn't really, I just didn't stop to find out, basically. But anyway, when I got sober, I was extremely anxious, extremely OCD. My main concern with my OCD, again, I had not been told that this was OCD at this time, but I now know it is, or it was. But when I got sober, my OCD really manifested in me thinking I accidentally drank alcohol or did drugs or something like that. So every time I would go out, I would be really, really concerned that I had accidentally drunk someone else's drink, or like taken a drug and not realized it or something, or like eaten something that had weed in it or something. And like I was completely insane about it and panicked every time I went out, because I was always convincing myself that I had broken my sobriety and I had to redo everything, and I put all that work in for nothing, and that was like a huge thing. I think a lot of my OCD was not inspired, but I think a lot of my OCD triggers have been taken from the days of me drinking, and the days of me blacking out, and the days of me making mistakes, and the days of me saying the wrong thing, the days of me sleeping with men I didn't wish to sleep with, and just making mistakes in general. And I think that I see a lot of the manifestations in my OCD today as a sober person relating to those days, and having me convince myself that I kissed a boy or I slept with a boy and I don't even remember, like, as a stone cold sober person, or taking drugs and I didn't mean to. Like, my OCD was really obsessed with those things, and so that included taking a lot of pictures when I was out, again, of like the pavement on my feet, just so I could like still make a trail of like the beginning of to the end of the night. Like, even as a sober person where I'm like completely clear-minded, I know exactly what happened, like nothing's gonna have happened that I just completely forgot about, especially nothing like the things that I thought was happening. Like, I think that if I were to spend a night with a man, I'd probably remember, but my brain was literally telling me that I was the worst person in the world doing the most horrible things. Like, so anyway, I spent a lot of time not seeing a doctor, because I then pinned it down to the fact that I had just gotten sober and I was probably just, reacting to this new life. My body's still getting rid of the toxins inside of it. Like, it's fine. It's going to go away. It's going to blow over. Like, I'm not going to feel like this forever. I'm only like a few weeks sober. Like, what do I expect? I'm not going to feel like absolutely 100% perfect. Like, the minute I stop taking drugs and drinking, considering I've been doing those things for years, like, your body needs a rest, and it's going to be like freaking out a little bit. And so I just felt like I had to live with it. Being in the AA program was extremely helpful, because I had never really had people I could talk to about, like, deeply about being an alcoholic and deeply about having mental illness. It was not something that I really wanted to talk about with my other friends, because, I don't know, I just felt like people didn't want to talk about it. So, but when I finally found myself in like a room of women that all they want you to do is like talk about your feelings and tell them how you're doing, and like how your sobriety's going, and like what you did as an alcoholic, and how your mental illness is, or how your mental health is going, like, that's such a relieving place to be. So just to be in a room with absolutely no judgment, and like no one saying anything shit about other people, and everyone's just being completely at the same level, the same wavelength, and just like understanding each other, is just like a wonderful thing. I always say that I think that we should have AA, like the whole world should have its own AA, but not Alcoholics Anonymous. It should be like whatever thing you find yourself being. Like, I think women should just have groups like AA where we could just sit and talk to like-minded women and just discuss things. And we do a 12-step program, which is when we go through certain aspects of our lives and things that we should apologize for, and things that we always thought was someone else's fault, but they actually kind of reflect on our own problems. And like, it's really relieving, and it really allows you to like let things go and sort of get on with your life. And I always think that we should definitely have one of those just for like the general person. But we'll see, maybe I'll start that. But yeah, definitely when I was getting sober, that was like a wonderful relief. But at the same time, it was during COVID when I first got sober, so I was kind of only on Zoom, which like wasn't very helpful. I didn't really have that close personal contact with these women at the time, so I found it, hard a little bit to open up completely over Zoom. I was on the computer with a bunch of strangers' faces looking at me. Like, I'm not really going to spill my guts about everything, especially when I'm just sober and I don't really know anyone. And like, I know that being in a room in a physical room with people like that is much nicer because you really do feel connected with them, and being on Zoom is a little bit like virtual and robotic. But nevertheless, it was a wonderful relief when I got sober. I don't think I would stay sober if it wasn't for AA, because I found like my life like wasn't really improving that much when I got sober, but the one thing that I did have was these new amazing friends and new amazing women like surrounding me, and I had never had that in LA before, so that was just like wonderful. If you ever think that you are someone who decides to get sober, I highly suggest going into a group such as AA, but there are other things you can also do. I think just like community is the biggest thing that you want when you get sober, and I think community is so important for everyone. And I think that, like I was saying before, like mental illness is, its number one skill is to make you feel isolated. And so if you are working on your mental health and you decide to get into a community, like that's the thing mental illness hates the most, because it wants you to be alone, it wants you to be panicking, it wants you to be inside your head, it wants you to just be listening to it. And so when you suddenly release yourself and you allow yourself to open up to actual people, your mental illness kind of does fade a little bit. Like, it's still going to be there, but it's definitely at bay a bit more. Anyway, when I got sober, I really did start experiencing a lot of OCD symptoms, and they were really hard to deal with, but I just thought it was sort of like a detoxing situation where my body would get used to my new life and I would work itself out, but it never did. My OCD got so much worse. Like in the video of me pouring out the smoothie, it's basically like I have to do the same action over and over again. Let's say, I'm going to just give you a random example. Let's say I'm pouring the drink and I'm thinking about, for some random reason, I'm thinking about some sort of disease or something like that. And I'm pouring the drink, and then I pour the drink up and I'm no longer pouring it. If the last thing I was thinking about while pouring the drink was like this random disease that for some reason is on my mind, like I have to pour again or touch again until I'm thinking of like unicorns and fairies and like my best friend and my husband and things that make me happy. And it's really, really hard to control your thoughts, so that's why it takes so long sometimes. And I genuinely don't sometimes get there, and I just have to literally like be like, stop! Or like, no, like just completely try and just physically block myself from continuing the action anymore, because I'll be there forever. But anyway, that started happening more and more. The sort of like touching, the checking of the doors was insane. I have multiple photographs on my phone of doors, of stoves, of candles, of hair straighteners, of taps, of anything that makes water. Like, I have millions of photos of those on my phone from me just having to take a picture, just so I can, if I'm out and I'm getting that, like, sort of mad ruminating thought again that my house is going to explode, like, I can just look at the picture and just be like, you turned that off, everything's off, like, your house is fine, don't worry, just, like, enjoy yourself. So, it just started getting much worse. The sort of, like, repeating, kept asking my husband to, like, check things, and, like, this very, like, puts a strain on the relationship, because when you're so anxious like that and so like your OCD is just overriding everything, like you're not that friendly of a person, or at least I would say that for myself, I was not the friendliest of people, because I was always really stressed in my head. And I think I said in the last video where I talked about this a bit, I was like, imagine someone that has like a really strict deadline that they have to get this document in by, and they're panicking and they're late and they have to do it, and someone just keeps asking you a question like, what do you want for dinner or something? Eventually you're going to be like, I don't know, like you're just going to snap a bit. And that is for me what OCD and anxiety did to my brain. I was really short-tempered, because I was just constantly panicking. And so like if people were distracting me, or I was constantly counting something, or I was constantly doing an OCD action, and if you distracted me, you fucked it up. I had to do it all over again. And I just kind of became like not that friendly of a person, because I was just so wrapped up in the fears and the anxieties in my mind that I just couldn't have anyone talking to me sometimes. I needed to be 100% focused on them. And anyway, I just like wasn't being the friendliest. I wasn't being the most fun. I would panic every time we went out for dinner or something. I would say, oh, did something happen that I don't remember? And he would just be like, no, it didn't. But like, he was so kind about it, but I can tell it's like strenuous to have to constantly be with someone and to convince them that everything's fine. Like, that's really hard. And also as someone who, you know, has a little bit of anxiety themselves, like, it's not really the best to have another partner who is like going insane with it and being kind of mean. And you know, I think when people panic around you, it makes you panic a bit. So if I'm just constantly panicking to my husband, like, he's definitely going to start panicking himself. And like, that is what made me want to fix or do something about it, because I felt like such a bad person. I was like making him get up in the middle of the night to check the doors, and then I was just like, oh, I wouldn't believe him, so I'd have to go check again, and it was just like insane. And it was this constantly, like, my OCD before medication was like constant 24/7 panic. It was not just like sometimes it came, sometimes it went. It was like it would go maybe for a minute and a half, and then it would come back. And I would be constantly thinking about things that scare me, bad things that could happen all the time, 24/7. Waking up in the morning was so hard. I would jump out of bed, but also find it really hard to actually get out of bed because of the panic I was feeling for like the day ahead of me. It was just terrible. So I finally went to see a psychiatrist, and I was like, please help me. I don't know what to do. And he made me sign out all of these forms to see like if I had anxiety or depression or like whatever it was. And so anyway, he diagnosed me with anxiety and OCD, and he prescribed me with Lexapro, which is, I think that it does seem that Lexapro seems to be one of the first medications most doctors will put anyone on when it comes to anxiety or depression, because I don't know why, but most friends of mine who are on medication say that they most of them say they started on Lexapro and then they like changed medication after time. And anyway, that's what I did. I was on Lexapro for a while, but I was dealing with some side effects from it, like weight gain and being extremely tired all the time, like to the point where I felt like I was going to fall asleep at the wheel of my car when I was driving on the freeway, which is really bad. Can't do that. So I had to switch to Prozac, which is much better fit for me. But I will say that I am still OCD. I still ruminate about thoughts, about fears. I still have to repeat the actions and stuff. But the difference is for me is that if I tell myself no, like stop doing the action, and I walk away, the panic inside of me dissipates like slightly faster than it used to. And if I'm having a ruminating thought, I am able to distract myself from it and think about something else, and then I kind of forget about it. Whereas before, it would be impossible for me to forget about anything that I was panicking about. And these panics could be the smallest thing in the world. It could be like I grazed a person on the street, and then I'm thinking they like were infected with some mad illness that I'm now going to get. Or like if I, sat next to someone too close in a club, like I would genuinely have fears that they like injected me with something, like I just like wasn't able to function in the real world at all, because you can't, like, the world is there to be enjoyed mostly, hopefully. And I was going to places like restaurants and clubs and my friends' houses and fun places, and I wasn't having any joy in any of it because I was so overwhelmed by panic that something was going wrong, that I couldn't function in the real world anymore. Like, the places that were meant to make me feel good made me feel bad, and the places that were meant to make me feel bad, not that many places like that, but those were also making me feel bad, and I was just like unjoyful, couldn't appreciate anything, was just in a dark hole. But I will say that being on medication, yes, I do have anxiety still. Yes, I definitely still have OCD. But the like ruminating feelings of the OCD will dissipate much, much quicker than they used to. And that is like a godsend. because now I'm not spending 24/7 panicking. I'm spending like very little time panicking now, honestly. Like, I get the urges to do things, but the after panic of that is kind of gone. And I definitely feel much better like waking up in the morning. I don't have that like shot of anxiety the minute I open my eyes. There are some things that I'm definitely not like healed from, and I think some talk therapy would definitely be good for that, because yes, maybe physically the medication helps with the sort of panic centers in my body, but I do still get triggered by the same things I used to. Almost 4 years of sobriety later, like, I'm still triggered by certain people, certain rooms, certain places, public bathrooms, like anything like that. Like, and I don't really want to be triggered by those things anymore. And I think that those things aren't going to go away unless I do some talk therapy and I actually just like discuss it with someone. I don't think medication will help with that. But the medication was honestly a godsend. Like, I'm actually able to do things in my life, enjoy things, you know. It's like a relief. This is not me saying that medication is good for everyone, but for me, it worked, and I can't believe I didn't try sooner, honestly. I just have a family that aren't that into medication, which I totally get, because medications, they always end up causing something else while helping the one thing, and then you've got to take a medication for the thing that it's making worse, and it's like an endless cycle. And I think especially in America, they really do enjoy like pushing things on you. I'm not really sure why, but they love you to take medication here. And I really wanted to be careful of that. I did not want to be turned into like some sort of zombie drone and just be floating through life. Like, I did not want that kind of life. But whatever I'm on now seems to be balancing me pretty well. But I guess we'll see how it lasts. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about that again, just because I think that I'm just commenting stuff. Yeah, I felt like I had to talk about it because I am seeing now how much OCD affects people in such a horrible fucking way. And OCD is the bane of my existence. It is the absolute bane of my existence. It stops me from doing things. It makes me question everyone. It makes me find it really hard to trust people. It's like one of the worst things ever, and I feel for anyone who's experiencing it. But I just wanted to say, talk about it again, because OCD is like one of the biggest parts of my life, unfortunately. Like, even though it's the worst part of my life, it's huge. And I think that before I was a bit like, I don't really want to talk about it that much because it feels like there's like a stigma, and I'm like, sure, no one else experiences the same thing, so like, why am I gonna like out myself as someone who is like subnormal or abnormal to the world, which is obviously not true. This is just like my internal thoughts coming out. But I'm very much like, fuck that now. If you're dealing with something inside, like, putting it out there, talking about it is so helpful, and hearing other people talk about the same things that you're experiencing is so helpful. And if I can literally make one person feel fucking better about having OCD, like, that will just heal my heart. And I think, like, after seeing all the comments on the TikTok, I was like, okay, like, if anyone is missed, like, if we can just reach the people on YouTube as well who have it, like, that would be great, because it gets me kind of emotional, actually, to see people being so grateful for other people talking about the insecurities and the problems, because, like, I am such a firm believer in community, and I am such a firm believer in having someone to talk to. I felt when I was growing up and, like, in my early adult years that I just didn't really have anyone to really, like, open up to and, like spill my guts out. I had best friends, but, like, I was very contained, and I just didn't think anyone wanted to hear about it, which probably wasn't true, but that's just how, like, I was in my head. And now I'm just like, blah, 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 like, this is how I feel, like, how do you feel? Tell me how you feel. Like, what are you thinking about? Did someone hurt you? Is someone nice to you? Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I want to talk about it all, and I kind of want to talk about everything that's going on in my life as well, which is probably why I started this podcast in the first place, just so I had a platform so I could just yap your ear off. But anyway, I love you guys. I just wanted to sort of like go over that part of my life again, because maybe some people didn't watch the first episode that I talked about it in, and it's just huge in my life, and I could go on and on and on about it. I could tell you how I have to sometimes retrace my steps when I'm driving because my brain convinces me that I hit someone on the street and didn't realize, and now there's like a dead person behind me. I watched this documentary about these people in a psych ward, and this one woman on the show had OCD, and every time she walked around the street, she had this she convinced herself that she put someone in the bin, in the trash can, and so she would have to like go back and look in the trash can and make sure there was like no person in there that she had like picked up and put in the trash can. And I watched that and I was like, fuck, I relate to this woman so hard. And I know to other people she must sound like loony, but to me, like, I 100% understand her. Of course, you could forget if you put someone in the trash can. Like, if she saw someone walking down the street and there was a trash can around, and then she turned around, the guy had like gone around the corner or just like, you know, gone on with his day, she would just like genuinely convince herself that she had put him in the trash, and so she had to like go back and check. I literally related to that woman so hard. And after watching that, I think I was like, maybe I do have a problem, because this person is in a psych ward and I really don't want to be there, but I just relate so hard to this person, so like that's a bit troubling, but it's fine with me. It's who I am. It's what makes me me. And I am, you know, I'm grateful to have it because I can talk about it to other people and maybe make them feel better about it, which is like all I really want. Like, why do we even talk about our problems? Like, yes, to get advice from other people, but also so we can find other people who are feeling a similar way, you know? And that is just like a relieving thing. And there's so many people in this world, and we should be talking more, and we should be discussing things more, and having candid conversations about things that scare us, because the minute you start talking about it, it's less scary, you know? And we should just like sort of break the stigma and sort of ignore the people that say, oh, you got to keep all your problems quiet, because it's like, why? I feel much better when I talk about them. So anyway, I love you guys. I just wanted to go over that again. And if you haven't subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you could. It's super helpful to me, and it should be super helpful to you. But I love all of you very, very much, and I will see you next time. And if you are having any troubles, you can always send me a DM. I always link my Instagram below, or you can send me a comment. Post a comment, and maybe you'll get more people responding. I'm not sure. But anyway, I love you so much, and I will see you next time. Okay. Love you.